This is not a lesson in economics. This is simply an exploration of how technology can impact real life value, a way to understand wealth generation, so that we can understand what wealth might look like and continue to look like in the future if our way of interacting with the medium of wealth would change, but the fundaments of what it means to have wealth remain stable. It is, in a way, just a thought experiment. Let's take a scenario where a farmer is living on a small plot of land. He has a little square acreage where he has a vegetable garden, and he farms mainly, let's say, potatoes. At the moment, the farmer is living in a tent, but he wants to change this. He wants a house. So he goes and hires the builder to build him a house. Now, the builder can build a house, let's just say, in 4 months with the help of 9 other workers. It's worth mentioning now that we are dealing strictly in a conceptual world. All values, costs, needs, and other calculations are strictly theoretical as a way to understand the thought experiment. So the farmer is hiring the builder to build his house, and the builder in turn will employ 9 other workers because it takes 10 workers 4 months to complete the building of the house. Now, when we talk about money and cost, it's a fairly abstract concept, especially when we transcend the level of specie, hard money you can hold in your hand, and start dealing in the world of credit. So let's go back to very basics and the world of trade and equivalencies of value. Now, the farmer has potatoes to offer as the produce of his stock and trade. And let's say that it takes 2 potatoes to sustain a single worker for a single day. Again, strictly hypothetical here. And let's further say that the builder and the workers are not interested in profit as we understand it now, and are simply looking to continue their survival. That is, they need something that will sustain them for the duration which it takes to build the house. It's a lot of simplifications. We are working here with the proverbial spherical cow, simplifying the model so that we can understand it more concretely. But at the same time, we're attempting to reflect aspects of the real world in doing so. So for the builder to be willing to build this house for the farmer and provide for himself and the workers who would be working for him under condition that they too would be provided for, require a total of 2 potatoes times the number of days in the 4-month period. You might think, are they working weekends? But they will need to live weekends whether or not they are working weekends. So it's 2 potatoes every day. Let's just round each month to 30 days and say that that's 120 days times 2 potatoes a day, which is 240 potatoes per person for the 4-month period, times the 10 people constructing the house, so 2,400 potatoes. So the farmer needs to be able to provide 2,400 potatoes to the workers in order to get his house built. It's the equivalent value, you might say. Well, let's also say that in this period, the farmer can grow and harvest 3,000 potatoes. 2,400 of those are going to be going towards the workers who are building the house, leaving 600 potatoes. The farmer himself will also need 2 potatoes a day in order to live. So that's another 2 potatoes times 120 days, or 240 potatoes off of that crop. This leaves a pretty thin margin of potatoes, which the farmer might need for other uses or simply want to store away for emergencies. Now let's take another situation. Same setup, but the builders have machines which allow them to complete the same work in the same time, let's say to keep it simple, with half as many people. So the master builder only needs to hire an additional 4 workers. Well, this means that only 1,200 potatoes are needed to sustain the workers through that same 4-month period, all other things being equal. Let's continue to assume that we're not taking into account profit and other concerns. So the farmer now needs to only provide those 1,200 potatoes over the same 4-month period for the house to be built. So of that original 3,000 potato crop, 1,800 potatoes are left over, not given to the workers, or 1,560 once you take off the ones that the farmer needs. This is a much larger margin. Those potatoes could create a larger emergency store or be used to trade for other needs that the farmer might have. So the farmer ends up, for the same product being produced, expending fewer potatoes, and for harvesting the same number of potatoes has more left over, while the 5 workers who worked to build the house continued to be sustained. If you think about this more broadly, the other 5 might be building a different house, which a different farmer is paying for with those same 1,200 potatoes from their plot. And again, I will stress that this continues to simplify, as of course, even with the machines themselves would require some, let's say, potatoes to sustain. And of course, the workers would be looking to take some extra potatoes home for their own emergency stores and so on. But again, we're talking the brute simple approach here. So fewer potatoes go a farther distance in this scenario, and the farmer has more potatoes left over for the same end result. So it is not only the creation of potatoes that generates wealth, but the relative means that are used to create an end product. In this case, the machines that create the house are in effect generating wealth, for they make the value of a single potato go farther towards the creation of a house. When we go all the way back to basics, it's easy to think of wealth as raw material. Fundamentally, this is value. When you leave all the abstractions aside, it's the minerals you pull from the earth itself, it's the ore you mine, it's the animals you raise, it's the vegetables you grow. These things combine and grow into a much more elastic, much more abstract system, but they are fundamentally value, wealth. As we have seen from this example, wealth does not just come in this pure form of resources, but rather the ability to change how far a resource can stretch. Now let's take another example and think about what happens if the farmer uses these extra resources he has left over to try to make it easier to grow potatoes in the future, when we effectively end up with potato inflation. This same farmer uses his newfound surplus of potatoes to improve his own farming methods, whether that's by hiring other workers to help farm or by creating some new tool which helps him farm more productively. And let's say that by doing this, the farmer can now go from producing 3,000 potatoes a month to cultivating and harvesting 30,000 potatoes a month, a 10 times increase. If only this one farmer does this, that farmer is wealthy. The farmer has an abundance of potatoes which can be used as leverage in trade. If other farmers figure out this method by one means or another, then all farmers become effectively wealthy. All farmers, and in this context, only farmers, have this means to produce far more resources than are required to sustain themselves or others. It's a massive amount of leverage in trade. However, if everyone realizes this, then effectively the worth of a potato is now decreased because it's clear that more potatoes can be demanded. Everyone has lots of potatoes. So the farmer with 30,000 potatoes in a month is now roughly equivalent to a former farmer with 3,000 potatoes per month because that 10 times increase is uniform. Of course, if others who are not farmers are still satisfied with just subsistence, that is, from the example before, are still fine with their 2 potatoes a day to live, and they don't request more potatoes than that, then the effective value of a potato does not change, except between farmers. Now, this potato abundance means that the farmer does not need potatoes, but the potato remains a source of leverage. So the farmer will still accept potatoes from others in order to have more leverage. And in this same situation, if other workers, like the builders from before, do not increase their asking number of potatoes, they are still fine with subsistence, then more people can be hired to do more things, resulting in more work and more creation, and the initial investment of potatoes that the farmer used to increase the production of potatoes now leads, for the same amount of initial labor, to a greater amount of work by more people. More things can happen for the same initial investment of work. However, realizing this abundance, workers may want savings. We'll still say that those savings are in the form of a potato. So they're looking for more than subsistence. They're looking for excess potatoes. They want their own potato savings. So now let's say that they ask, instead of 2 potatoes per day per person, for 4 potatoes per day per person, 2 to sustain themselves and two to put away, which they can use for their own leverage to hire people to do other things or simply as a kind of potato savings account. So the effective buying power of a potato is halved. It can only go half as far towards hiring someone, assuming all other things are uniform, as it did before. So this abundance led to more buying power, but the buying power led to more widespread wish for wealth, which in turn leads to a decrease in the leverage of the potato. However, the total number of potatoes has still increased, but those potatoes being put away by the workers who are now requesting more potatoes themselves don't go as far, because if they were going to be trying to hire someone, the other worker that they in turn would be hiring would also be looking for the 4 potatoes. As long as the total growth of potatoes largely outweighs the change in requested potatoes by the worker, then it remains true that a large increase of work can be done for the same initial investment in growth of potatoes. That is to say, there is such an abundance of potatoes that everybody can have more potatoes and spend more potatoes in order to get others to do more work, and the total amount of work increases as well as the distribution of potatoes. So we end up in an interesting situation because of this, where simultaneously 2 potatoes are the sustenance of 1 person for a single day, and yet also it is half of the value of 1 person's work per day. So the farmer's 30,000 potatoes a month are really worth only 15,000 former potatoes. However, overall, as we said, there are still more potatoes and therefore greater potato distribution. So what do we take from all of this potato juggling? Value is relative, but it is fundamentally based on 2 things: ease of sustenance and cheapness, effectively, of action. That is to say, what does it take to provide resources of one kind or another such that a person can sustain themselves, continue to live? The easier this is, the more value there is. Likewise, if it takes fewer resources to accomplish an action, like in the example of building a house using technology instead of just manual labor, the relative value of your resources is increased. So, more resources mean more value, unless those resources are overwhelmingly evenly distributed, or people are overwhelmingly seeking its distribution, which has a watering down effect on the value of those resources. And no matter what money looks like, whether that's coins, paper bills, checks, cryptocurrency, carven bones, or wheat and potatoes that you grew or that you mined from the ground, its ability to support and sustain is its power. And this depends not only on the item itself that is being valued, but also on the technology and the society surrounding that money or that good or that representation of money and good. In other words, if I am able to produce more abstract wealth in potatoes or Dogecoin or whatever, more of that than I need to survive, then I have leverage. I can use this excess wealth of whatever form to perform actions or have actions performed. If I can, for instance, have my house built for 1/100th of my excess value above the level of sustenance, then I am effectively wealthy, even if everyone else can do the same thing. And so a good look toward the future, which takes into account changing technology, must also take into account these technological changes of how we use currency in order to increase the benefit of currency itself. It's not just the relative power of a good, it's not just the distribution of that good, it's how far that good can fundamentally go, and that relies on what we are able to achieve. And the crux of it is that this will matter no matter the form of the currency itself, whether it's bare bones, simple from the ground, dug or grown, or something so abstract that it's a number in the ether. It is its ability to sustain us and its ability to enact change or leverage to make things happen that are its real representation. And this is a wonderfully freeing way to examine money, because in the future that is what will make the difference. When we look toward the future, we can't get bogged down in how the money is exchanged, what form it takes. We need to closely examine how we can make money go farther, how technology can change the value of money itself. It's in that direction that the future lies, or should lie, in ease of sustenance, in a supply chain that is so automated that its cost approaches nil, housing that can be constructed for the equivalent of pennies a day, an economy that is practically self-sustaining, agriculture that abounds in produce and distribution, and 1,000 other things. These will produce wealth in a very concrete way, no matter the abstractness of the medium of money. It will provide us with sustenance and with leverage, and this in turn will lend freedom and potential to our own lives. The freedom of being able to take whatever actions we desire, cultivate our own skills and ambitions, and reach ever higher. It all starts with how we think about the future of money.